So is national champions title worthy or does it fail to live up to expectations? Let's find out now. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Pass, and it's football season. It's the end of the regular season, starting to get into bowl games and playoff contention. And what better time to release a new football drama than right now? And now we have STX's National Champions, which is coming to theaters on November 10th, 2021. It's a very different film than I think what you probably expect, judging from the title. It's not so much a football action movie, it's more of a football drama. Think like Draft Day, where you had football as an overall kind of theme and idea, and it kind of went into the business of football, but you didn't get a lot of football action. That's what National Champions has. So my hot take is I really liked it, but don't go in expecting to see any sort of football action. This is really more about kind of the business of college football, some of the newsworthy issues that have been swirling around right now involving players getting paid and compensation for players who are superstars and also players who get injured and kind of don't go anywhere after their college career. And that's really kind of the main idea behind this. And they build this really kind of intense, long drama around that. In Draft Day, you have the two college football teams getting ready to play in the national championship. And on the eve of the game, 3 days before the game, the star quarterback of the Missouri team, I think is where they're from, LeMarcus James, who is the Heisman Trophy winner. He's supposed to kind of lead them to the promised land. He announces he's boycotting the national championship game unless they essentially overhaul the college football player system and give benefits to every college football player and have some sort of collective bargaining agreement. So it's a pretty dramatic move. And you can imagine this ruffles some feathers, especially 3 days before the national championship. So then the film is kind of about James trying to evade detection and still kind of get the word out, and also the various entities that are in charge of college football and in charge of this game trying to scramble to figure out what to do and how to kind of get the game going. And in that, there's a lot of twists and turns. I mean, there's a lot more drama than I think I expected, and it's pretty entertaining, especially if you're kind of into college football and you are kind of fluent in some of the major themes and major issues that are happening right now. So things I liked about this movie. The first are the leads. I mean, the main characters are played by Stephan James, Alexander Ludwig, and J.K. Simmons, and they all do a really, really good job. Stephan James was a really great lead. I mean, he was a lot more nuanced and a lot more compelling than I expected. Like his character had several layers. His character was able to kind of play the football role, but then also was a really good public speaker and kind of a really good leader in a lot of this movement. And I think his character had a lot more depth than I was expecting from a movie called National Champions about like a football team. And then you had Ludwig, who was a really good kind of supporting character for him. He helped kind of get things done. He helped kind of bolster up James when he was faltering and helped kind of keep him on the path. And then J.K. Simmons, this was just a perfect role for him. This is kind of a role he was born to play. I mean, it's his typical role. It's kind of like a fast-talking, overconfident kind of jerk, but I think he did a really good job, and he definitely fits the college football coach very well. The second thing I really liked is, I guess I call it the multifaceted approach. I mean, this film definitely has a main message about college football players and compensation for them, but the film does have some other views that I appreciated. There was one very passionate view by one of the characters where they talked about how they essentially went to college on a scholarship, and that scholarship only existed because of kind of the revenue sport. You hear that thrown around, that there's some revenue sport, and those revenue sports generate enough money for non-revenue sports to provide scholarships and facilities and things like that for other student athletes. The main revenue sport is always football. Basketball is usually up there. And then there's, depending on the college, some colleges have other sports that do, but football and basketball are usually the main two revenue drivers. And kind of the argument is those then provide scholarships for all the other student athletes whose sports don't generate revenue, but still kind of need to be there to balance the books. So there's one character who makes kind of an impassioned argument or impassioned speech that like the only reason they went to college was because of the revenue sports, and they kind of then had to work their way through college and use that sport to then work their way through life. And so that's kind of generally the counter argument whenever you have something about paying the players and whatnot. And the film does have several different viewpoints, and I liked kind of how in depth it went in a lot of these areas. But I did appreciate that it had kind of the counterpoint as well. It wasn't just a fully kind of one-sided story. And the last thing I really liked is the drama. I mean, this is a dramatic film. There are lots of things that happen. Some of them are underhanded, some of them are kind of above board. But the story has several twists and turns, and it'll keep you guessing. I mean, you can kind of generally think where it's going, but there are some curveballs. Sorry, I use football analogy. There are some audibles that the story throws along the way. Maybe it kind of jukes you left and right to try to, misdirect you and try to keep going forward. So I did appreciate the story. I thought it was at least compelling enough to keep me interested for the relatively long runtime. It's a little under 2 hours at 112 minutes, and I was definitely enjoying it the entire time. Things I didn't love. There's a romance aspect with Kristin Chenoweth, who plays the wife of kind of the head football coach, played by J.K. Simmons. She has a romance with another professor at that school, and it does eventually tie in with the story, but a lot of it does seem to be kind of not related, and I think they could have rewritten it. It felt kind of out of left field and didn't really seem to contribute much to the overall story. Look, don't get me wrong, I love Kristin Chenoweth. She's a fantastic actor, and I really like, whenever she's in, but her character seemed a little wasted in this film. I thought that they could have either given her kind of a more prominent role or just kind of cut that all together, because it didn't really contribute much. And the film was relatively long. I didn't mind the length, but if they could trim off 5 or 10 minutes, it would have made for kind of a tighter story. The second thing I didn't love is Lil Rel Howery is in the film, but I think his character feels wasted. He doesn't have that many scenes. This role allows him to stretch kind of his dramatic chops. He's not actually that funny of a character, but he also is barely in it. And Lil Rel Howery is a lot of fun. They could have used his talents more to have a little bit of levity, or they should have more prominently featured him. He has a really good scene in the film where he's talking to Stephan James's character and Alexander Ludwig's character, and I really liked it. It kind of put a little bit of heart back into the overall argument. But that was basically it. He had a couple quick scenes at the start, and then that was essentially all of his performance in this movie. And he could have been so much more. I wish he would have been used more. He felt a little wasted in that little segment. And the last thing I did not love is the ending. And I think the ending is a realistic ending, kind of what I would expect to actually happen, but it did feel a little unfulfilling. Essentially, what happens in the end of this film is you have there's a lot of underhanded dealings trying to kind of undercut LeMarcus's character and his reasons for doing the strike. Eventually, what happens is there was this incident that occurred in the college where someone was injured very badly. And so essentially what happened is during a bar fight, someone got punched. That person suffered like a permanent blindness in their eye and like a fractured skull. Like, they were injured very badly. And the only person that could be identified at the fight was LeMarcus James, because he's the star quarterback. Everyone knows who he is. And so he kind of was put under scrutiny, and essentially once his name was involved in it, it went away. Some booster paid to have everything go away. And after his strike, after he kind of organizes the strike and starts getting some groundswell, some of the powers that be try to use that to force him to play in the game and stop the strike. So the implication is that at this bar fight, LeMarcus's brother Reggie was the one who, I guess, injured the other person, and so the powers that be kind of threaten that they will prosecute him if he doesn't play. What we find out at the end is that actually Reggie's already killed himself. He, I guess, took his own life because he couldn't play football anymore because he was, too broken, and so he took his own life. But when they open up the police report, they find out that it was actually LeMarcus James's friend and teammate, played by Alexander Ludwig, who appears to have thrown the punch that injured the person. So rather than his brother being the one who's going to be prosecuted, it's going to be his best friend, who has been like standing by him throughout this whole fight, and who, it appears, after this game will probably not have a football career, not go on to play in the NFL. So after this game, he's done with football. not really sure what he's going to do with his life, and now it appears he might be prosecuted. But LeMarcus has text messages and information about the cover-up. So his basic argument is like, look, if you go down this road, it goes deeper than that. There was plenty of people involved in the cover-up. They're all going to be brought to light, and so essentially the whole system is going to go down. It seems like at the end they broker an uneasy truce where the game still happens, except LeMarcus and Alexander Ludwig don't have to play the game. They set the game out, continuing their protest. Like essentially, they are protesting the game until players get rights. But the game still happens, and pretty much everyone else plays in the game. And LeMarcus doesn't tell Alexander Ludwig that he did this because his best friend was going to get prosecuted. It might be implied, but he doesn't actually say that. And so the film ends with both of them in the hotel room right next to the stadium where the national championships played, and the national championship kind of starting on TV. You get to see just a little bit of the build up. You don't get to see any of the action, and that's kind of it. That's the end. And LeMarcus basically says, like, this is kind of the start. Now the information's out and they can't stop what's coming. But in the end, there was no official change. I mean, sure, they got some momentum, they got some people involved, and maybe change could be coming, but there was no official change, and the game still happened. So again, like it's a little bit of an unfulfilling ending, but I think it's probably actually kind of what would actually happen. So it's a realistic kind of ending. So take that with a grain of salt. So the film is National Champions. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I thought this was going to be kind of a throwaway sports drama, but it actually kind of deals with some modern issues, and it's pretty entertaining. So I think you should definitely check it out when it comes to theaters on Friday, December 10th, 2021. Especially if you're interested in college football, I think you'll really appreciate it. So thanks so much for watching. If you liked this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.